Hey everyone, just putting together a pretty brief, hopefully no more than 20-minute presentation on how to put together a video presentation for assignment 3. So the reason for this tutorial is that I noticed in assignment 2 a lot of people had to submit a video because they weren't able to be in person to present, and I thought that there was a lack of effort in the production and submission of your presentations. Once you guys get out into practice, being 4th, 5th years, that's not too far away. You're going to be working for practices, you're going to be bidding for jobs, for projects, and it's all going to come down to the presentation, whether it's your drawings, your line work, and on your drafting, the renders, the videos you put together. And so if you're going to be bidding in front of a client, you want that to be as powerful and as well put together as possible. And being 4th, 5th year students, you should be trying to do the same with your assignments. So I'm going to start off here with a short video by Alex Roman. This is a CGI animation, architectural animation. It's not quite what we're trying to do here with our video presentation, as we'll be using raw footage from a camera or your phone. But in terms of the way you sequence together scenes and how shots work, in terms of the speed that they move, whether you're panning across, you're fading in and out of shots, whether there's a zoom or like a dolly forward, I think there's a lot that can be taken from this production in terms of how a basic video should go together. So I'm just going to skip past the intro and get into some of the architecture. But things to consider is the speed at which you move. So as a viewer, you don't want to be seeing someone run around with the camera or an iPhone that's really jittery and hard to focus on. So you want to try to think about when you're filming your teammates or yourself build a model, think about it with more of an artistic approach. So pan up or pan across slowly, or walk in towards your physical model, or even just hold it there while your phone there steadily while someone else is working. These are all really simple techniques to be able to get a much smoother and better production. So if you're interested to have a look at this animation, it's called The Third and the Seventh, and it features a lot of really well-known pieces of architecture from around the world. I'm going to be working in Premiere Pro. Premiere Pro and After Effects comes with the Adobe Suite, so if you don't have access to it, I know that you have all received an email from the university telling you how to gain access to it remotely, and if that fails, then you can get a 7-day trial from Adobe. So a good way to do that would be one person from each group gets a trial, and then when that trial ends, the next person gets a trial, and so that should give you enough trial time to be able to get your assignment done. Okay, so in Premiere Pro, let's go to New Project. We can give our project a name, so Assignment 3 Techniques. Find a location, so I'm just going to put that into a folder on my desktop, and make sure that your capture rate or format is HDV. Press OK. So what's really important here is to make sure you record your content with your phone in landscape. So we're trying to avoid examples where you're holding your phone in portrait and you're trying to put a portrait video on a landscape format, TV or screen resolution. Close this for now. Okay, so this is Premiere Pro. The reason we're using Premiere Pro and not After Effects is because Premiere Pro is more like InDesign, what you should be using to put your documents and your presentations together. And After Effects is the equivalent to Photoshop for video. So if we want to change the hue or levels or make some movement animations or sequences, we would do that in After Effects. So if we wanted to put a lens flare flying across the screen, or we want to animate some text, we could do that in After Effects. But then we would bring each of those individual scenes into Premiere Pro, and then we'd stitch those together to make a individual single video. So to get started, we need to import our media into the bottom left. So I've taken a series of random videos from things around the house, mainly plants. So I'm going to drop those in. And I'm going to bring in another video that I recorded, portrait, just to show you how that looks when you put a video together and why I'm saying we should all be recording in landscape. Okay, so this content can be things like sketches, physical model building, teamwork group, someone else making a physical model or working on a computer, as well as some content on of your digital model. So, and I'll get into that later, but you know, pretty easy, simple fly-throughs or grasshopper script animations. Okay, now that we've got some content in there, we need to set up a sequence. So let's go to File, New, Sequence. Now this is really important to make sure you come down the list to HDV and select HDV 720p 25. So that's 1080 by 720 with 25 frames per second. Full HD is actually 1080p, but for the sake of keeping our files smaller and being able to upload and download them easier, let's go 720 and give our sequence a name. We'll just call this assignment 3 for now. Obviously you guys will give all your projects better names, especially for us when we're marking, we can actually locate and know whose video is whose. Okay, so now we've got our timeline and our program up the top. So this is where we preview. I'll just make that a little larger. Go 75%. And now we can start to drag in some of our scenes. So I'm going to bring the first one, and we want to keep existing settings. This toggle down the bottom allows you to zoom in, or you can hold Alt and use your scroll wheel to move in. So you can see there's two bars, V1 and A1. That's video 1 and audio 1. If I bring in another scene, I can actually put that on top, so you can cut from one to another. But for this case, we just want to put them side by side. We're just going to go and work in a linear fashion. I'm going to do that for all the videos we have. Few random ones here. Actually, and I'm going to drop this one in at the end to show you. Now we don't need audio, especially not for this tutorial, so I'm going to right click and go to unlink. I'm going to select all the audio tracks and delete. Feel free to get an audio track online, something with free credits, and drop it in as a backing track to your presentation submission. But now what we have is a time bar, and we can scrub through some of the shots. To be able to watch that in real time, you can press play or hit the space bar. One thing I might add is that Premiere Pro's on-screen render isn't great because it tries to offset quality for speed. So even though it looks blurry, the resolution should be a little bit sharper. I did record these tonight, so they are a bit blurry due to poor lighting. Okay, so some of these shots need to be edited. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to double click. It brings up this new window over on the left. I can actually get that title and move it. So now we can see the production that we're scrubbing through, and the source image, which is this one here that I want to edit. So I can scrub through here and find what I like, and maybe I just want to go to the first part before it flickers. And I think the flickering is just the resolution. But let's say I don't like how close I go, so I'm actually going to stop there. And I'm going to use this button called Mark Out, and what that does is it trims the video, and you can see here we've just trimmed it. So you can click in that blank space, right click, ripple delete, and we can edit the next one. So that's a bit of a pan across the leaf, and maybe I just want to start there, so I'm going to mark in, and I want to finish just before the end, so I'm going to mark out, and that's going to crop my video. I can either slide it in place and then right click, ripple delete. So I'm not going to edit them all, but that's a little introduction to how you would edit them. Another consideration, which I forgot to mention just earlier, is because we've recorded these on our phones, which are pretty high tech these days, our phones typically film in HD 1080p. So if I click on the first scene and move this blue time bar to the first scene, double click, you can see we're actually almost twice the size of the initial frame because we're working on 720p. So we just want to scale that down. And when you scale it down, just make sure you're not inside the frame, so you don't get a black border. You just want to be a little bit outside. We can do that for each of them. Scale down so we get a bit more of the content. Okay, and so this is the example of the portrait and why we don't want to record with our phones on portrait. So for that to fit in height, we're going to get a shot that doesn't fill the screen. And I saw a lot of assignments from last year for this unit that submitted some video portrait, some horizontal, and you're jumping from two formats, and it's not very nice. So make sure it's landscape. I would delete that. Okay, so let's leave that for a second, and I'm going to jump into Rhino and show you how you can get some content out of Rhino. Just split screen. I've produced this simple little video. I've produced this simple little exercise, dynamic facade. I'm just going to bring that in a little bit. And before we start setting up any of the camera views, I'm going to point you to some free screen recording software. Now OBS Studio is pretty good, but I like to use ScreencastOMatic, which is purely online. There it is. We want to launch the free recorder. So you're going to use this tool to record you flying around your model and then use that as part of your video, which is a much easier way than actually animating and rendering out an animation. So it's a bit of a cheat, but it's a nice, quick, easy way to get some good outputs. Okay, I'll move that window aside. You can see this has popped up. This is the ScreencastOMatic window. Size, let's make sure it's full screen. And if I just drop this down a fraction, we should be able to see the window that it wants to record. Okay, so it's defaulted to this window. And we don't need computer audio, we don't need narration, and we want the screen, so we can hit record. Cool, now we're recording. I'm going to just split screen. You might want to do a scene that walks through the script if you're using a script with your model on the side. So for instance, we will change the radius or the angle. And you might want to use that tool to show how you've built the script. You don't have to, but it's just a nice way to show the development of the definition. So you can build it up step by step. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. So a nice way to showcase your model in Rhino is to go to the rendered view. In Grasshopper, if you're using Grasshopper, plug your output into something called a custom preview. So that component can take your output and you can turn that preview off. Actually, we can do that for everything else. Just keep that component on, type in swatch, plug that into your material color, and we can give that, let's say you choose a nice cyan as part of your presentation theme, or some of your titles and whatnot throughout your document, so you can set that up. So don't forget, all of this is recording at the moment. So I've spent all this time setting this up during the recording. It's probably better to do that first and then hit go on your ScreencastOMatic and then start to work on your movements. So one option is to just somewhat crudely just sit in the model. You might want to minimize Grasshopper now in full screen, and you can just with your cursor slowly rotate through the model, and you can think of that as one scene. Now we can reset and do a second scene. Now we might want to zoom in, kind of like a camera zoom. Or you might want to come down to eye level. So they're pretty crude, but they will work provided you've got a nice smooth hand. A better option is to set up camera views. So let's say we want to go from this side. Up the top here, right click and find named views, and then we want to click the name view tab, click save this view, and we'll just say view 1, and I'm going to move that across to this side, save that view as view 2. Let's go back to view 1, or double click view 1, and you can see it's animating. If that doesn't happen for you, right click on the view, go to animation settings and make sure that's checked on. If it's off, it won't animate. And so now we can think of this as a scene. We're recording. Let's click view 2. We'll get a nice smooth transition between the two shots. Cool. Another one would be front on, so I'm going to say front on view, and we want to zoom in and maybe come up to something like that. So I can start with, go back to front on. All these transitions, we'll chop them out and just pick the parts that we want. So we're going to start there, and then I'm going to click front on 2, and that's going to be our next animation sequence. Nice. While that's recording, I'll bring up Grasshopper. I'm going to bring it onto my side screen, but if you don't have two screens, you can always just make it nice and small. Maybe that's too small. And find your controls. If you keep it outside of the white frame, we can crop it to this white frame later for the video, so no one has to see this happening. And you might want to animate the angle, so you just need to really smoothly move that slider across to show how it opens and closes. We can slide the radius. We can even show can show how it might build up from 0. So we can do a scene that starts like that, and then we decide we want to generate our form onto the building, and then we can build up the radius and the angle. So pretty simple techniques. We're just screen recording with a nice rendered display in Rhino, and we're manually sliding the numbers in Grasshopper. Perfect. So I'm going to come down to the left once I'm happy with a few shots. I'm going to hit pause, I'm going to hit done, I'm going to save. I get this window. I'm going to save video file to give it a name. So this is CURTIN tutorial. Folders desktop, that's fine. Cursor, let's go no cursor, so you don't see that moving around the screen in the video, and we can publish. So I'm going to pause this recording and come back when that's done. Alright, so we've finished saving our ScreencastOMatic video to the desktop. I'm going to bring back up Premiere Pro, and I'm just going to drop in that video. So before we drop that in on the timeline, let's crop it down to the area that we want to look at. So just zoom that in a little bit, move this timeline, this one over here. So this is me just explaining the Grasshopper part, so we can click mark in and move that to the end and mark out. So that's the first video that talks us through the Grasshopper script. I can import in the same video again, except this time I'm going to double click on the new one and we're going to crop it to another area, and I'm going to crop it to that animation that we set up with the named views. So set up the views, and it's about here, so I'm just going to hit play to make sure, and that's where we want to start. So mark in, I'm going to press play until animation stops there, and mark out, so we can drag that on the timeline. I'm going to bring in another version of the same video that we recorded. We had the screen capture on that entire time, so now we can get a number of snippets out of that same video. So we also set up a second camera view that went from front on, which is about here. Mark in, move that to the top, mark out, drag that on, and I'm going to do it once more. Drag in our screen recording, double click, and find that last video that we set up where we're changing the sliders. So about there, mark in, and mark out, drag that on, and there's one more, so I'm just going to drag that in as well to show you that you can use that same video as many times as you need. Move that bar across, and the last thing we did was we animated that turning on. So we go mark in and mark out. Okay, so we've got our entire sequence. That one there needs to be scaled down, so double click and scale that down a bit. Could probably zoom in a little bit so we don't see the toolbar and we just see the geometry. Move the time bar across to the next video. double click on the screen because it's zoomed in quite a bit. I was in the wrong window, so make sure you're in program. You can zoom in until we've just got the full white screen. Same with this one. So we're just trying to capture the viewport itself so we don't see the rest of the toolbars to keep it nice and neat. Next one. And then the last one. Cool. So that's more or less, just zoom out a bit, that's more or less our video. The last thing we want to do is add a title block and set up the transition so we can dip to black between each scene. This one here, for instance, looks quite long. If you were to watch that back and you think that maybe it needs to be sped up, what you can do is right click on it, go to speed duration and either set a speed by percentage or by time. So it's currently 39 seconds. If I want to make that 20 seconds, type in 20. It's going to reduce the length of that. It's going to be twice as fast. And then we can click in that blank spot, right click and ripple delete to bring everything back down. And before we do the transitions, let's add a title sequence. So go to the top to Window, find Essential Graphics. There's some templates here we can use. I'm just going to go with a simple one. Let's just say that one there. So grab the sequence you want, drag it onto the second video bar. There you can see your text. I actually want that to start with a black background. So I'm going to select everything in the timeline on video 1 and just move it across a fraction. So we're going to have a few seconds of just your text on a black background, and that's going to fade into your video, and then we're going to fade that out. So I can click here and say, give it a title, assignment 3, group 6, or 6 presentation, video. And then now let's just add our final touch, which is going to be a video transition. Drop down, go to dissolve, dip to black is the best one in my opinion. So we want to dip to black at the end of the title text graphic. So if I hide that entire bar and scrub across, it's going to fade the text out. But what that's going to do is it's actually going to fade the text out while it's on top of our video. Going to do a dip to black at the start of the video so it gradually appears, and we're going to put a dip to black in between every other scene. Just grab it, click and hold and drag it onto each of the videos where they meet. So there's a few more left. If you want a scene to be darker for longer, you just zoom in, click on the dip to black, and you can drag that out. It's not going to do it on that one, but we can do it on this one here. And we're going to have a much slower fade through black. I'll just add this to the last few. And you want to dip to black at the end as well, so that way it fades to the black screen that kind of shows you that you're at the end of the video. It's a nice way to finish it. Alright, last thing is to output our video. So go to File, Export, Media. Make sure the format is H.264. Your preset, make sure that is set to high quality 720p HD. Where you have output name in blue, click on that. Set your save location and give it a name. Assignment 3 tutorial, and then you can export that. So it shouldn't take too long. I'll pause it and turn it on when it's finished. Okay, so that's finished loading. On my desktop now I have assignment 3 tutorial, so I'll just open that up and show you what that looks like. So obviously this is just done in my apartment at night. You guys should be able to do a lot better than this. Just consider your shots when you're filming either your own work or your teammates' work, and think about how it's going to stitch together in the final video. I'll just skip through towards the end. Okay, that's it. Good luck with assignment 3.